Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because, this kind of feels like a sort of finale aspect of the 34 count indictment that a jury found him guilty on earlier this year in May. And that is something that is kind of, it remains to be seen whether Trump's actually going to be sentenced on this issue before the election. And right now, the latest on that is that the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, recently told the trial judge that, he's not opposed to pushing back the sentencing.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by Supreme Court reporter Kaelan Deese. Kaelan, guns in the Supreme Court, always a fun time, some contentious legal issues at play there. What is the latest cases that might be heard on that front?
Yeah, so we saw earlier this year the ATF ruling over the bump stock issue at the Supreme Court, which found that the Trump administration bump stock ban was illegal. And now we're seeing the ATF kind of come back into focus at the Supreme Court. Obviously, they're in their break right now, but when they return in the fall, there's another ATF measure, this time under Biden, which is called the framer-receiver rule, or sometimes it's dubbed by critics as the ghost gun ban, because it essentially classifies all these different weapons parts as firearms in and of themselves.
And ghosts and guns are both very scary.
Yeah, very scary, yeah. So essentially what it's doing here is it's putting a lot of weapons manufacturers, gun manufacturers in a bind, because it's calling these parts, that are disassembled, firearms, and it's, creating all this headache for people in that industry. The other thing is that the Supreme Court's recent decision over another major case called Chevron basically told all these agencies like the ATF that you cannot just, take, an ambiguous statute by Congress and create your own rule out of it. You actually have to, you tell, the president, anyone has to tell Congress, write this law specifically this way.
Right.
And so this is another kind of test coming forward for the ATF, to see whether this type of rule is actually something that can stand up, whether there's actually any legislation that, backs this type of measure. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see, whether the justices think that the ATF, again, overstepped, or if they're able to find a way perhaps to justify this measure.
So the state of New York has overall really overtaken the Biden Justice Department as a source of former President Donald Trump's legal troubles.
Yeah.
What is the latest on that front?
So the latest on that is right now we're kind of in this territory where we're waiting to see what happens with the civil fraud judgment that happened in February. It's costing the former president almost $500 million, and obviously he would like to see that wiped away. So he's appealing it right now at sort of the intermediate appellate level in New York, and there's going to be an oral argument hearing on that next month in late September. Right now, the Attorney General there, Letitia James, she's out there at the DNC currently trash-talking Trump a little bit, but also her office is filing court records in this case and saying that basically the former president is raising the same arguments that he did during trial over, the reasons why this, fraud case should go away. And they're saying that he's basically just being really repetitious and not really like showing, the muster behind his appeal here. So she seems pretty confident that this fraud verdict is going to hold up. But obviously, Trump, even if he loses at this level, he can appeal to the state's highest court. So this appeal process is anywhere from being done. So it's still kind of a wait and see. But perhaps before the election, we could know what the intermediate appellate court has to say about this decision.
So we're also awaiting Trump's sentencing in the New York hush money case, where he was convicted of multiple felonies, but he is also appealing that. What do we know about that?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because, this kind of feels like a sort of finale aspect of the 34 count indictment that a jury found him guilty on earlier this year in May. And that is something that is kind of, it remains to be seen whether Trump's actually going to be sentenced on this issue before the election. And right now, the latest on that is that the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, recently told the trial judge that, he's not opposed to pushing back the sentencing because Trump's trying to push it back.
Till after the election.
Till after the election.
Right.
That's what the former president wants. So it kind of remains to be seen whether, Judge Merchan is going to go along with this, whether it's going to be like a 10-day delay or if he actually will push it back, beyond November. But, it's kind of this, I think a lot of people are really interested in this aspect of it because when we saw all these, the guilty verdict against Trump, you saw a huge fundraising boost.
Right.
You could imagine, regardless of whether, the sentence, whatever he gives him, like house arrest or potentially jail, even if it's deferred, whatever the sentence is, could result in a fundraising boost for him at the very least. So it'll be interesting to see if we actually get to this point or if it will have to be resolved after the election.
Political impact of it, no matter what it is pretty uncertain. Thank you,
sure.
Kaelan.
Yeah.
You can read Kaelan and the rest of our investigations team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.